Well, in this week that is maybe a little bit skewed towards a space launch, it's the and this guy's really a space. What would you call yourself? A nerd, a
Yeah, kind of a space nerd. Yep.
space nerd. But you know what? As much as we'd like to talk about rockets, I really want to talk about Optimus. So,
I mean, humanoid bots. There hasn't been that much news, let's say, on the Optimus front this week.
well, there's
But as usual, there's always some news in the humanoid bot space.
Yeah, so we had the Furrier. That was very interesting. You and Herbert talking to
Mhm.
Zen Co. the other
Yep,
day.
Zenko.
I did a little video about that, a short one. But did you have any big takeaways from that particular interview?
Um, I think it's very interesting how you have a lot of people that are developing, let's say, these technologies, and they don't realize how if you can combine them together, you get something else. So they didn't start out wanting to develop a humanoid bot. They've been doing it for patient recovery for a long time and needing to build these exoskeletons, and some for helping people to walk, some for helping people with arm mobility and everything else. So they understood actuator design, how to build all these things. And then they just said, well, what happens if we actually try to make these things bipedal and moving? And to their shock, they didn't take very much effort for them to be able to make a fully operational humanoid bot. And and that just tells me a lot that the technology has moved ahead so far that that's why you were able to see so many new companies cropping up here and there. Some of them pretty small. There's another one that is just starting out in Alberta, Canada. It's like,
Oh,
wow, way up there, and they're taking their shots at it as well. And so you're going to start seeing more and more. There was, I think, last week, then we talked about another one that just popped up out of China,
yes, yes.
and
So I think
now
we're
they're all going to have the same problems of where they're going to compute, what kind of AI models they're going to use. Are they using off the shelf actuators? They're going to be designing their own. So they're all going to have these kind of capital requirements. The question is whether they're able to get the funding. And the one thing about Foyer is they're already a company that's already making money in the healthcare industry. And so they already sort of have something kind of backing. They already understand manufacturing, and they're already producing at least about 100 bots
right.
a
Yeah.
year at this point, and they see next year they could probably get to 1,000. So they actually have orders for these things, and people wanted to use them, and almost to their shock that they're just like, well, wait a minute, it's not ready, it's still a work in progress. And it's like, doesn't matter, we'll take it. And you're seeing the same thing with Unitree. I think their bot is still kind of a work in progress, so it doesn't matter. They're still selling them to a fair number of research organizations, and we
Right.
already know of two in the U.S. Carnegie Mellon is one, and UC San Diego is another, and there may be a few more.
Right.
So they're out there for researchers to start using and experimenting and finding all sorts of interesting applications. With the Carnegie Mellon researchers, they were just trying to see if they could control the bot purely with video. So
Okay.
not with like a hand controller or anything like that, but being able to take video in and then make, the bot do the motion. And
Uh-huh.
they were able to do that. So they're taking, motion capture. And, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because Kinect has been around for a long time. That was just a game controller. That the whole idea was that these cameras would look at what you were doing and then come up with the kinematics to fit your arm. And from that, your avatar would be able to do it. So it shouldn't be a big leap to be able to go from that to having a mechanical um, avatar to kind of do the same thing.
Sure.
So there's really no surprise, but it's just interesting to see these research organizations are doing that and experimenting it more and more. Um, what's
The other
Mhm,
thing that you zeroed in on with Furrier that I thought was really interesting was on the actuator side of it, which I know is
mhm,
a special interest to you. They had talked about the fact that the off-the-shelf stuff was useless. So they
yeah,
started building their own, and they came up
mhm,
with their models, what they might call their first level models.
mhm,
And their
mhm.
first level models were pretty much trash because
Yeah, yeah,
they couldn't last long enough, or they couldn't produce enough
yeah.
power, or they had all these different problems with
Yeah,
them.
they a couple of them, I think they burn them out like really
They
quick
burn them
because
out.
the,
Yeah.
the torque demands were too much on them. But they settled that, and that's all idea of kind of this fail fast with engineering and doing iteration is that sometimes you can sit there and just keep on thinking like, oh, what do we have to do and design and design and design and never build because you're not quite sure, or you just go out and build the darn thing and do some
Yeah.
testing and find out. So, they learn pretty quickly and they had to come back and change the actuators. And, that's how design is supposed to be. The thing is, they always talk about the two things you don't want to see, made is like laws and sausages. Well, it's the same with everything.
Yeah.
Is that basically everything is sausage. If you don't want to see what kind of goes into the design of a lot of the products that you have and a lot of the failures and everything else that kind of went on. But it's because of those failures is why the products are so good. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. And they're learning a little bit on it. And that's the way it should be. Just
And
go
then
out,
you, and
build
then
these
you
things.
were, and then you were drilling down, trying to get him to give you what he thought his ultimate cost might be in production. And he was either didn't know or was too coy to admit, but he did give you one data point, which was 50% of what a similar off-the-shelf actuator would cost him in quantity. So have you since then, have you been able to kind of,
It's been kind of hard because there's actuators all over the place. So his feeling is that the smaller actuators would be in the order of maybe a couple $100, but the really big ones, it seems like right now are costing them tens of thousands of dollars. I'm like,
yeah.
yikes! I didn't expect a number that big, and I'm pretty sure you'd be able to get that down. And these were the ones to be on the legs to get the legs going. So it's not like you need 40 of them, but still a couple of them will drive the price up.
Right.
And again, the cost structure that they're looking at right now was a couple $100,000 for that. So they're not cheap.
Right.
And that's kind of
But
what
he,
they would be
but he,
selling them for.
but he talked about I think he said 100 to 250,000. I could go back and look, but
Yeah.
but I think that the range, the 100 to 250, was not based on what the bot would have in terms of hardware, software, whatever. It was in terms of the amount of money they thought they'd have to expend with the engineering staff communicating with the lab itself to get the thing to work or to get it to
Exactly. And it seems like there's already plenty of customers they're seeing that are willing to kind of pay that cost because they all want to learn what the capabilities are and study this new emerging technology. And so there's been a lot of debate this past week about what's the state of the competition, how does it stack up compared to Tesla, and that certainly Tesla has tons and tons of advantages, but it's hard to tell if actually if that's a moat, or it's just that they seem to be the prohibitive favorite when it comes to be able to do it because you just go down the whole list and it's like, yeah, it's really hard to say that anyone's ahead of them in one particular area. There are some small things. The Tesla bot is not walking at the speed of Unitree. Unitree is going pretty quickly, and no one else is close to going the speed of Unitree. The only question is like, what's the sacrifice? There to, in order for them to get that speed, what have they kind of given up to be able to get to that? And, do they have some of these other capabilities? So it could be that, very short battery life as a result, or, extremely costly to build or something like that. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know, but, it would say that in many of those that, Tesla is definitely in good shape. And like I said, I just like to see it moving a little bit quicker. And that could just be a question of, really trying to optimize, the overall actuator and design, making sure that the power consumption is not too high. And I don't know, some of it could also be the compute. That's what we're just gonna have to see is like how quickly these systems are able to make the decisions of what to do next.
Right.
And whether they're constantly hesitant because they're thinking like, oh, trying to do this and that. And if we want to get any ideas is that from using full self-driving, it's always will hesitate a lot of times. It's something that seems to be really silly. And you're like, what's going on here? Is it just being extra cautious, or is that it just can't decide quick enough? And then it just has to kind of pass. And it's like a human, it's like, oh, you can make that, just go.
Yeah.
And you've been here long enough, to see what's going on. It should be kind of obvious. And where's that hesitancy coming from? Is it that, the networks can't come to a decision, or they're just very, very slow?
Right.
But then you start talking to people who are using V12, and it's like, all that hesitancy is gone. It's just like decide, it just goes ahead and does it. And so part of it could be that you've got a lot of heuristic code that was tied in there that's just gumming up the works, keeping it from being able to make these decisions in a timely manner. And as you start to go more end to end, it might be that, it makes the decisions lickety split and you're not sitting there worrying about it. So when you want the bot to go over and start picking something out of the bin, you don't want it to go over there and like, it's like, when you hand out the chocolates at Thanksgiving, like, and everyone's like, oh, which one do I want to take? It's like, no, just grab one, will you?
Yeah.
And move on with it. So that's sort of one of the things to be looking for to speed that up is, are they going to be more decisive?
If you come back to the cost of the actuator issue again, and we go to first principles, I don't claim to really be great at understanding first principles. I've tried my hardest, but as a non-scientist, I'm still, a little shaky. One thing I do remember is when Elon was talking about building that rocket, he said, I just want to add up what the cost of materials is. And yeah, there's going to be some addition, based on the intellectual things we have to do to it, but basically it's the cost of the raw materials. So if that large actuator is not going to cost $10,000 for the cost of raw materials, I'm a positive of that. So
right, that's what he calls the idiot index, right?
yes, the idiot
is like
index.
take the cost of materials, and then if it's several thousand times the cost of material, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
So
it may be a matter of making enough of them to get the cost down.
scale,
Maybe a
scale.
matter of being clever enough to figure out how to do the windings or something. Tesla is already making some pretty sophisticated and pretty large actuators.
Yeah. There's some pretty sophisticated actuators out there overall, and I'm not sure that they're necessarily coming up with designs that have things that are so complex that you wouldn't be able to make them. Yeah, they're probably a little bit different, and they may be a little bit costly because they got to use a little bit more copper than you like to use or something like that. So from the material standpoint, but I don't think it's like they need to use real exotic materials. Some of it might come down to the tolerances of the kinds of windings that they're putting in there, whether the equipment you need for that is really expensive to set up, and it would be if your production volumes are low.
Right.
But once you start getting the production volumes in, and everyone's like, yeah, our production volumes are only like 10,000 bots a year. It's like, no, they're not going to be 10. You're going to be doing much higher numbers. So you're actually, and part of what Tesla is trying to do is that by making sure that they have like only 7 actuator designs.
Right.
That's what you're really talking about. Right. So you get that multiplier there. The fact that, one of the actuators, I think there's 9 of them that are used. So the medium-sized rotary actuator in Optimus. So 9 right there per bot.
Yeah.
So that means, okay, if you only make 1,000, well, you still need to build 9,000. Okay. And so now you're starting to be able to scale that a little bit more and get better production volume. Obviously, if every actuator was unique, then it gets a little bit trickier. But I'm sure that whatever manufacturing techniques they put together for any one actuator, it just has to be kind of scaled over for the other. It's not like there's like got to reinvent the wheel every time. It's like once they figure out how to mass produce one of them, they can figure out how to mass produce the others.
Okay, well, I think you brought a few outside sources today, something that you wanted to.
Oh yeah, I mean, kind of what's going on is that let's see, is that it felt kind of like a quiet week because we didn't have any big videos drop or any new announcements of some new startups or funding, anything like that. But I think some of the more interesting things is that right now up in Atlanta is the Modex show, and that's, if we look at what Agility is doing right now, they're up there at the Modex show and they're showing off what they're doing. And let's see if I can go ahead and get that up here.
Okay.
And up, let's see, except I got it on the wrong screen. Let me go ahead and drag this on over here, and we can go ahead and take a look. So they've decided
you're not sharing the screen.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing I got to do here. I got to remember to share. And now that I got the screen all full here, and it's like, okay, where'd the Zoom sharing screen go here? All right, so let's go ahead. And they never put any of these controls where you can find them. There we go. Let's go ahead and share. There we go.
There you go.
So, all right. So we can see Agility is there at this show, and it was a different one. I don't think it was Modex last year, but it was around the same time last year. There was another show, which they did the same thing. And the thing that was pointed out is like, they're the only one at the show a year later. So given all of the excitement about humanoid bots, they're the only one, and they're running this nonstop. So you could just go to, either agility.com, or if you go to the Agility X site, you will see this pinned up there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is live right now. I see, well, it's about 2,500 people viewing. And so it's going around and doing, basically kind of the same thing. There should be another one around there that will probably show up in a second. I haven't watched it long enough to see if how it charges. or whether it
Oh,
gets
yeah,
swapped out. I
yeah.
sort of assume that when one of them is in a low state of charge, it goes in and gets replaced by another one. Now, what's interesting to notice is that this is the first time I had seen any sort of gripper put on
Um,
to Digit. So now the hands are a little bit different because you can see that's a kind of a challenging tote to pick up there
yeah,
to do just with flappers. So they've come up with something, and it's just going ahead. And I think they're trying to show that the longevity of it and the fact that it's just going to go on, and they're not afraid to do this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
to just to go ahead and get an idea and acclimate everyone to that. Now, okay, and there's the other one. So he
Uh-huh.
probably just came back from his coffee break or
Yeah,
his charge
right.
break, whatever. It's and whatever the bots do back there. And that the hands, like, rather a custom design for this kind of thing, which may be fine. And Agility has taken the approach all along is that they're really not trying to duplicate the human body.
Right,
They're trying to take a more of an engineering approach of come up with what is the best design for the task.
right.
And so in this case, you see that there are no hand attachments on here because these totes you can very easily do just with
Oh,
the
yeah,
palm of your hand.
right.
And okay, so it's going in there. Notice how it kind of pulls out a little bit to
Yeah,
get a
yeah,
better reference. Yeah, because it's got
yeah.
to get it up above there. So that's
Uh-huh.
kind of a lot. We do something like that. I'm not sure if it looks in the tote or not to double check. It may. I know there were some other examples that did where they would actually look in the tote, but the totes were clear. They would put it up there and then would be able to look in there and see
I see. Yeah,
what it had.
yeah.
And okay, now waving to the crowd. That's all very nice. So yeah, I mean, you can go here and you can look at, and okay, so it puts it there, and now I think it's just going to go ahead and take it off. So obviously it's a conveyor to nowhere.
Yeah, yeah,
So
right,
they
right.
just want to show that it goes back and forth and back and forth, and you've given the task. Now I know they also released around the same time some fleet management software that they're going to use to make it easier for people to define the tasks that they want to have done and to monitor what the bots are doing. So when you start having a lot of them, you kind of want to know what's going on. You see that's like number 21 up there. So you're going to want to know
Uh-huh.
what's bot 21's, what's its state, how's it doing. Now look how tall it's able to get up there. You see kind of
Uh-huh.
it's nice the way its legs are set up. It's kind of nice. And you can see how the other one goes down. Ah, there we go. My goodness. It's like they were listening to me or something. I hadn't
Yeah,
seen this
that was nice
before.
of
They're
yeah.
showing the fleet management software right here. Man, that was perfect. Who
Yeah.
knows? I mean, they can't be, wait a minute, this is recorded. This isn't live. So how do they know what we were doing? So it looks like they just probably give some very simple tasks to describe what they want the bot to do, and it goes ahead and does it.
Yeah.
And that's very nice that, it probably has enough smarts in there to know it's like, oh, grab something, a particular tote, and that's all you have to do. And it figures out exactly what it is you need to do. And oh, okay, in this case, it's placing it over by the other conveyor. So we
Right.
see what's going on. That's very nice. I hadn't seen that before. So that's nice management software. They still have some safety fencing around it, just because
Uh-huh.
right
Okay.
now they probably want to make sure the humans are out of the way.
Now, this is the one that Amazon has a few of them in the warehouse?
Yes, yes,
Right.
they're doing something with Amazon. I think if you go again to the Agility website, they were showing an example of where they're doing it. It's kind of a similar thing. I think that
Yeah.
it's called like a put wall automation where they're pulling the totes off of a rack and then bring it on over to the conveyor
Sure.
and swapping those things out. So, that's a typical task that has to be done, as we know, in a lot of logistics and warehousing. That's common.
Oh,
The
and
other big
manufacturing
news,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the other big, see the man behind the curtain. You see the man behind the curtain there, it just loaded another tote there.
I,
Okay. Now this one has got something in it. It looks like, oh, the one that just got in there, it's actually got material in it. I thought they were empty before, but it looks like it's actually filled with something.
I see. Yeah.
So, so it's going to be moving that around. Now, I think it was last week, the Agility announced they have a new CEO, Peggy Johnson,
Oh,
who
yes.
has a lot of experience. I think came from Magic Leap and others. And what they've done is the smart thing for companies is that they had two founders, and the founders were CEO and CTO and stuff like that. But that's not their role. They were founders. They were the visionaries. And at this point, they've stepped aside. So
Uh-huh.
it's not like the CEO was fired. The CEO was one of the founders and has moved over to a different position where he can
Yeah.
kind of go what his skill set is, and that is being more of a visionary.
Yeah.
So both of them are there, but they've kind of filled out the rest of the C-suite with a lot of executives that have a lot of experience in growing big companies to be very big. So yeah, I think they're well positioned to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do okay in
Very
the
good.
future. And again, they're the only one demonstrating actually at trade fairs, so you can go out and take a look at them and
Right,
probably
right. Yeah.
place an order if you want. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that kind of came along, and I'll just stop sharing for a second while I monkey with my screen again, is also in the area of training, because we talked about that agility has something, and I think they have an LLM interface as well, but it's probably also something very easy to manage these tasks and to make sure that they're being done right. But the question is, what about overall robotic training, and what's it going to look like in the future?
Mhm.
And oh, let's see, I need to that's why I'm lost, because that video is still up, blocking my vision
Blocking.
from everything else that I was trying to do here. And that this is see, covariant, and I need to get this one up and over here as well, and let's see what we can do. Yep. All right, let's go ahead and show this page here. If we look at covariance, they made an interesting announcement today. Actually, I think yesterday is when we first heard it. There was like an interview on CNBC of all places,
Okay.
talking about their new model for Robotics Foundation, and basically they're in the traditional robotic space of industrial robots, and so they've been helping, bin picking for a longest time, so that they're in there watching what the robots are doing, telling what the locations are, need to get picked up. But they have like a lot of data, tons and tons of video data. And it seems like they've been able to take that video data and are now being able to put a model that you can use to teach your normal robots.
I see.
I was expecting that this was going to happen at some point, because the question has kind of come up. It's like, well, all the stuff that they're putting in the humanoid bots, could that be used for the traditional bots? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I just wasn't sure in what order, I thought it was like, once that's done, they'd be able to do it. But, now it looks like these models, and it sounds like they're saying it's actually much easier because there's fewer degrees of freedom and only one arm, and they already have lots of data. So the data sets are already in existence. And so that makes it very easy for them to do that. And that kind of then asks the question, well, what about, could you do the same thing with humanoid bots? And it sounds like, yeah, you could. It's just a question of that data set, because they have years and years of data that they've been able to collect to be able to go through and look at these various kind of operations.
Sure.
And if you do the same thing, and so it comes down to how many bots you need to have. And it seems like if you were really serious, so someone did a calculation who, really understands the space pretty well. And you thought, oh, 100 bots 24/7, you could do it in about a year. You'd be able to grab a pretty good data set. So it's like, wow, okay, that's not a whole lot of bots, and that's pretty quick time. And if you want to reduce the time, just start producing more.
Yeah.
So
you reverse that. You get you do 1,000 bots and you do it in a month.
Yeah, exactly. So if you get a lot, you could probably get it. And it's just a question of whether these foundation models are kind of good enough for what they want to be able to do. And it just seems like they're getting closer and closer, because once again, here's another company coming out and kind of announcing that, their own sort of breakthrough in what they've been able to do and achieve. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at what Covariant AI is doing. I think that's also quite interesting development there. That makes me really bullish on the capabilities that we're going to see from the humanoid bots. And the thing to remember is, like, don't get too distracted by this whole discussion of AGI. It's like, are we going to have AGI this year or not? It's like, that's a completely separate discussion.
Right.
And that's, you don't necessarily need AGI to get full self-driving to work. It would be nice, but it's probably one of the steps on. And the same thing with the humanoid bots is that you don't need AGI to make them useful. You may need something really close to them for them to be fully general purpose, to really be able to come in the household and do all kinds of stuff, and let them wander about out in the normal environments. But for a lot of stuff you're doing in the factory, it does not have to be whatever the definition of AGI. And see that this is the problem, is that no one can agree on what AGI is in the first place. And well, the only thing they agree is that if you go by what people were defining AGI back in like 2012, and you were to show them what we have today, everyone back then would say, oh my God, that's AGI. Okay. But as we've incrementally been improving, the goalposts have been kind of changing, and everyone kind of look at it and say, wow, it's close, but it doesn't quite have this, doesn't quite have that. So I'm not going to get stuck in that debate of whether we have it, when we'll have it, whether we'll ever have it. I'm pretty convinced that we'll have some models that are pretty darn good in being able to do quite a bit with these bots. And that's going to be coming from places you almost don't expect.
So Scott, you've been in this particular space for a very, very long time. You've got the universities that are involved in this. You've got the labs
Mhm.
Boston Dynamics that are more interested in this science than they are in the actual product. And then you've got a whole bunch of product companies now that are involved. In the world that I was in over in the bicycle world, everybody would have been absolutely mesmerized by what everybody else is doing and taking a look and saying, well, should we be looking at that also? Or do we need our own variation or version of that? I have to believe that with these 21 that have been identified so far, all of these 21 are totally watching every video, going to every trade show,
Oh
grabbing a
yeah.
bot if they can. and,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean, it's like you see Agility had 2,500 viewers there.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
guarantee, someone from a lot of different robotics companies around the world right now, not just customers really wanting to see what's going on. Someone might be recording it. It's, I was hoping to see if there's like a robot exchange or, where the charging is done.
yeah.
I've seen it's sort of interesting that when it does charge, it is like literally like lays down and takes a nap on the floor. So, so it's like it goes down there and they plug it in. So, but I haven't seen it out there, but I just seen like other pictures in the past when they're doing it. So, and
But
that's what we always want to know is like, how long can it really run?
yeah,
Should I sit there and just study 21 and put a stopwatch on it? It's like, when does 21 disappear and then come back again? And, is it going for 2 hours? Is it going for 3 hours?
yeah. But in a normal world that I've been looking at over the years, and even to a great extent in Tesla, you hide all this stuff in your lab and you don't put it
Mhm.
there until it's ready to go. And in this robotic space, it seems like everybody is so nerdy that they want to put it out as soon as
Yeah.
they've got
Yeah.
a little change or a little benefit or something new, or it's like they want to show off or something. I've never seen an industry do this before.
Which makes me wonder if, the traditional robot companies that usually would operate that way, they're
Yeah,
working on like the new design without telling anyone until it's time to announce it.
yeah,
And, there may be a rumor here and there, but I haven't heard any rumors of them working on human bots. They could be.
yeah, yeah.
And speaking, I think there was like Optimus, they just announced another one. So that there's probably one more thing I can share.
Oh, okay.
And while I'm doing that, today is Tuesday. It's not the normal Wednesday because tomorrow I'm kind of occupied, but this
Actually,
is coming out on Wednesday.
we're recording on Tuesday. It'll be
We're
out.
recording on Tuesday. It's coming out on Wednesday. Yeah, right. So, and I was a little bit worried that maybe Cern Basher's trying to take over my Wednesday gig with you here because I see
No,
you had him on there last week, and
no,
you never. Yeah,
CERN only had 4 shows last weekend. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
CERN's really putting out the content.
Yeah, yeah, he is, and yeah, I mean, we love sparring back and forth. It's he's a great, as you know, he lives kind of local by me,
Yeah,
and his models are really quite interesting. I didn't know if you had any follow up on what he's because he was talking about the telephone operator, which I
yeah,
thought
no,
was
his models are,
quite an interesting kind of thing to talk about and understand, how the automation was already there, but took a long time before there was like this decision to go ahead and do the replacement.
there's so many examples like that. I mean, I worked my way through high school and part of college as a dishwasher. The big difference between hand washing dishes in a restaurant and having a dishwasher do it. Then there's collating machines in the print
Right.
field. The collators changed everything. We used to walk around a table. I was in the printing business for a few years. And all of a sudden now you got a collator that takes that away. Well, there was millions of people that had a job collating.
Yeah. 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 And, word processing also had a lot to
Oh,
do with that as
absolutely.
well. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, many of them, you just kind of go out and you sort of see that happening constantly. And let's see. So what we have here is, um, and let me go ahead and kind of get that up right down here without. Oh, right. So let's go ahead and see what we can share on our screen here. Whoops.
Whoops.
And once again, it's like, okay, where do the controls go? Okay, I got the controls here. And where do you always hide the controls on me?
You've heard the one place you don't want to hear the word whoops, right?
Is in the operating room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the dental chair. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, oh, wait a minute. That's because that'll like, oh, come on. Let's iconize that thing. Let's get that thing back up. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen this way. And this is going to be weird. And then I can kind of put it over here because it was like blocking my controls completely. That's why. There we go. So once again, our friend, the Tesla Bot Journal, and he does this a great job of collating stuff that's out there. It's
Okay.
I feel like he's my research assistant.
Right.
Okay. It's just, and so he's found another technical manager position for a Tesla bot, which is like to work on the end-to-end training.
Wow.
Yeah, John Gibbs kind of replied to that. It's like, wow, that's also, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
That, they're kind of heading in that way. So it gives you an idea of how the Optimus team is, continuing to grow up and have more people involved going ahead. So yeah, that's like about the only news we've seen. And it's kind of good that to see everyone is scouring these things out there
Yeah.
to find out what's the next thing to be on the jobs listing.
Well,
And
and the one reason that I keep bringing up this question about all this visibility from all these different companies, I wonder if the visibility has something to do with the not just showing off, but rather the fact that the TAM is unlimited and everybody seems to
Mhm.
get that. I mean, you talk to Brett Adcock and he just agrees with Elon. There's just like once this gets out, there's no limit to the
Yeah,
number of these
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. And it's not just Brett, but also you've seen Cern's models.
Yeah,
How Cern also has gone through it, and we've been sort of surprised how when we start comparing notes with other people that they're coming to very very similar conclusions. Now the one thing about Cern, is like uh, he can't tell a very good joke. I mean,
why do you have
I'm sorry. I mean, he was on here, so I have to bash the basher, okay? Because
actually?
he got to dig in there on me. So now the irony is that uh his wife is literally a comedian. She's a
Yes,
stand-up comedian.
yes, yes.
And evidently she's saving all the good jokes for herself because he doesn't have any. You think he just goes, hey, I'm gonna be on Randy's show. You think you can write a humanoid bot joke for me? So
Maybe he'll have a better. Maybe he'll do better this week. We'll challenge
yeah,
him.
we hope. He didn't do very good in the reply comment section. I was just going like, oh man, the, they're worse than most dad jokes. Even I wouldn't tell some of them. And I don't even remember some when they were that bad. So
Oh man,
uh,
Cern, you're gonna have to do a rebuttal on
yeah,
this someday.
exactly. So there you go. He's gonna have to come back on. Yeah. Or we'll
So,
have to all three of us will have to be on here together. Then you'll have to referee.
what would you like to see, Scott? What would you like to see Tesla show? I mean, everybody, I think, agrees Tesla is positioned perfectly to own this territory. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter that there's going to be second best and third best and fifth best, and they're all going to sell thousands or hundreds of thousands of bots. But Elon and the factories, I mean, they got the factory capability, they got the 30 billion in the bank, they've got the background in building actuators. I mean, it just goes the engineering staff. It goes on and on, all their advantages. What would you like to see next, though, in terms of from a science or from a robotics or from a like next like proof of concept? What would you like to see
I mean, from the bots, what I'd like to see
for the
them do
bots?
next.
For the bots,
Okay, so I'd like to start seeing them do some real tasks.
real tasks. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So let's stop seeing these, simple little things. Let's actually see something real that down the floor doing that. Um, Figure's starting to do that, but it is a fairly simple task. Still in the lab. It's not actually on the shop floor. But
Right.
from the standpoint of Tesla, I would like to see that, and I would like to see some improvements in being able to change direction for the
Oh, yeah.
bots.
Mhm.
So they need to go fast, and I think I've been kind of beating this drum, quite a bit. Is that depending on the operation, if you have to do long movement, then you need a bot that works fast. But we don't expect the bots to be going long distances. We already have bots for carrying stuff that go long distances, and they're called mobile bots.
Right.
And they're designed for that. They're designed to be able to schlep a really heavy load. to do it at what is kind of the maximum. They can't go that fast. They only go about 1.5 meters per second.
Mhm.
They could go faster. It's just that they're in an environment with other humans and stuff like that.
Sure.
So they don't want them to be racing too much. So there is already that. So all the humanoid bots have to be able to do is sort of operate in a small confine that they don't have to go really fast.
Mhm, mhm.
But they need to go fast enough for whatever that operation is. And a lot of times when you look at the operations, it's not the going from A to B, it's that when you get to B or to A, turning around to go in the opposite direction. And
Mhm.
that's where, again, it's like, it's like turning the Titanic. It just
Yeah.
takes forever to come around. It's like, they just got to work on that. And I think that's more of a software issue than is a mechanical issue. I don't think, unless they've discovered like, oh my God, we didn't design, the actuators quite right because this is going to require something. It's like, no, I think it's just a balance issue because we humans know how to do it pretty well. Now we just, pivot on one leg, kind of throw a weight back and we're around and off in the other direction.
All
So
right.
you start doing that and then you get that human level speed.
So let me dig a little deeper on that then. What are we've seen Optimus do work with hand tools. So we've seen him in
Mhm.
a long time ago. We saw him building another bot or putting the arm back on or something on another bot. So we saw him doing that kind of a skill set. We've seen Optimus a very long time ago picking up a piece of material in the factory, it
Mhm.
looked like, and move it over just like Figure was just doing, not Figure,
Mhm.
Fidget was just doing in that
Mhm.
example. So we saw him doing that a year ago. We've seen Optimus moving things from container to container and making choices and deciding what, which is which is what we just saw in that one just a second ago with regard to existing, as you say, equipment that can pick and
Mhm.
place already that's not humanoid. So what would it be? Again, maybe in a factory environment would be nice to see it actually around other humans or whatever. But how sophisticated or what would be real proof? If we've already seen all these other things, what do we need to see that would really do it for you?
Um, yeah, doing real work in the factory and being useful at it. So, demonstratingly being able to do it at the same rate, it would be nice to see some operation where you have the human, see exactly what the human's doing, what the cycle time is supposed to be, and then watching the bot and being able to overlay the two to see how it's doing it and see Optimus do it for a whole shift, just like what Agility is doing right now at the trade fair. They get that camera there. You can sit there and just see how long the bot's going to go. And you're seeing getting several hours out of the bot. I don't know that you're getting a full 8 hours because I don't think they even say on their website there. Like, I think it was like you can do maybe like a 7 hour shift over a certain period of time with some intermediate charging in there. And that's okay. If you're getting a couple hours, that's fine. And especially if you just swap one out for the other. So maybe it takes 3 to do the work of 2 or something like that. That's fine because so long as you're getting the job done that normally you would do with maybe 2 people. But if you're paying it at the same cost or less, it's useful as far as I'm concerned at that point. So that's what I'd like to see is Optimus kind of doing those things. And it, it's I just get the feeling like they're holding back on this for some, it's like they must be doing these things down there. And it just can't be, oh, the only thing we've been doing in the lab for like the past 6 months is teaching Optimus to fold t-shirts. Like, no, you've been doing way more than that. And you haven't been doing it in the lab. I know you've been doing it somewhere else, but yeah, they just don't want to show it. And maybe it is because they, as Elon has said, that everything gets examined frame by frame and they want to be a bit more careful about that.
Yeah, I would think that the best thing that they could do is set up an exact duplicate replica of the Lucy show,
Hmm.
the conveyor and the chocolates. And I don't know if the bot would be capable of wrapping that candy or not, but maybe they could have the candy just going into a box. So picking
Well,
up,
certainly the bot won't be capable of eating the candies like Lucy and Ethel did, right? Once the conveyor speed get cranked up there.
well,
Uh,
maybe
it's fun. I've shown that a couple times when I've given classes in manufacturing. Of course,
sure
half the students have no idea
what you're talking
who
about.
Lucy is, but it's like it's a really good example of manufacturing, and it's just done in a Hollywood set. Well, it wasn't even a real conveyor line. It's just like a bunch of people in the back like cranking something to make the paper moving along. But they really sort of showed what production systems are like, and then
Sure.
how you have to keep up with it, and then if you start cranking up the conveyor doesn't mean you get more stuff out. It means you've got to balance everything there. So it's definitely worth a watch. Anyone that's seen it is absolute classic.
Yeah, as everybody is well aware, I was in the bicycle water bottle manufacturing and printing business, and I wanted my printers to start, upping their numbers. I just felt like they could do better, and so I set up a bonus system for them to hit, and they hit it. And I'm like sitting there, wow, that's great, that's fantastic, until somebody snitched, and it turned out that the failure rate, or the quality problem, was being kind of exited over here into a trash container and not reported. And so this is another example of real life. You might be able to get the numbers up, but sometimes you don't know what the consequences might look like.
Yeah, you needed to have a better tracking system there. I mean,
Better tracking
you
system.
should have, wait a minute. It's like, I'm buying this much bulk material, but I'm only getting 80% out. That should have been a red flag right there.
Well, yeah. So these things are, yeah, in small business, sometimes you don't even notice. But all right, Scott, I think that was great. I love the fact that there's enough information on this every week to be able to jump on it and talk about what's going on. And of course, sometimes we have to interrupt the week and do it a second time because it's just such breaking news.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet, and of course, well, tomorrow's Wednesday, which means the day after, or today, when everyone's watching this, is going to be IFT3, and fingers crossed that it goes off on schedule when it's supposed to.
Yeah, we'd love to
And
see that Starship getting up, and I'm just, it's so exciting. And I was talking to, who was I talking to the other day? I said, the crazy part about this is, if this happens, and it's absolutely mind-boggling how important it is to the United States, to even our strategic capabilities, to telecommunication. I mean, so many things are impacted by this, and yet it will not be a headline in any of the traditional press.
only if it blows up.
Oh, if it blows up, really, really.
Yeah, and any explosion, even if everything's successful, but if any point, part of it is it's designed to burn up on reentry. It's not supposed to. And I'm sure that's just going to be played as like, oh, Starship crashes in the Indian Ocean. Oh, it's down at the bottom with MH 370. It's just,
yeah.
So who knows? So they're ditching it somewhere over the Indian Ocean, and I just kind of wonder how many North Korean trawlers are out there right now, just kind of waiting for that thing to come down and see if they can get a piece of it, try to dredge it. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of wondered. I would hope that there's some U.S. assets over there just to make sure that it really does go to the bottom, and it's for future archaeologists to discover. And
this was the first Starship.
yeah, this is the first one, because it's going to come down in pieces, but it's not going to be completely melted. It's
I thought they were going to try to give a butt down landing above the water before that.
I'm not sure. I think that's for the super heavy.
Oh, okay.
And of course things just keep changing and changing and changing. So at first it was going to go off the coast of Hawaii, which I thought was like, okay, just do it off the coast of Hawaii. And that's a lot easier to go out there and control that area because it's going to be close to U.S. territorial waters.
Right.
But they changed it. So the super heavy go up, supposed to do the boost back, and then it's going to come down somewhere in the Gulf, do a soft landing there, and then collapse over, and then they're going to sink it, and for some reason not recover it. I still don't understand why they don't want to bring it back, and evidently it's too much of a hassle or something like that. So they're just going to ditch it, even though I think there's just going to be valuable engineering data there, and that you just would want to bring that up and take a look at. And then Starship is supposed to continue on and go into what's technically a suborbital kind of orbit. It's more like a ballistic missile. Right. It'll have probably enough velocity that it could go orbital, but it's designed in such a way that its perigee is below like the von Karman line or something like that. So pretty much when you go into orbit, it's almost impossible to go straight into a circular orbit. So you can get into orbit that might be high enough, but it's going to be elliptical. And depending upon how you go up there, the lower part of that ellipse can already be kind of in the atmosphere. And that means you'll go up there, you'll do about half an orbit, and you come around, and the next thing you know, you're in the atmosphere, and then you basically re-enter, and that's it. And so it's designed to do that kind of orbit. They're intentionally not trying to put it into orbit in case something goes wrong, that you've got like this huge thing that's just like rogue sitting up there, like, oh, how do we bring it down? So you don't want to have any unnecessary space junk. So it pretty much will deorbit on its own. But they decided, rather than just letting it kind of come down on its own, they're going to force it to come down on its own, because they're going to do a bunch of tests. So the first one, of course, like get into orbit. Then I'm not quite sure the order of all. One of them is they're going to test the doors of the Pez dispenser. So they don't have any payload, but they do have these doors that they want to check out whether they're able to open and close those things. They want to do a propellant transfer from one of the tanks to the other. Yeah, they're gonna try to test that in basically in 0G to see whether it's possible to do some sort of propellant transfer. And then they decided that they want to actually start up the Raptors in 0G in orbit. So that will be a first. And that's what they're doing, is they're then going to actually use it to take it out of orbit. So if they don't do it, it should land off the coast of Hawaii. But in this case, if you do that, it's coming down early. And the question is, they're not quite sure where early is going to be. It's somewhere a little bit east of Madagascar to a little bit west of Australia. So somewhere there in the middle of the Indian Ocean, kind of the middle of nowhere, but as soon as middle of nowhere, there could also be, people out there. Now that they know exactly where the zone is, it's officially said, okay, you got to watch out here. So, yeah, that's so it means it's going to be over quick. It usually takes 90 minutes to orbit, right? So, and it's doing maybe half an orbit. So it's the whole show will be over, 45 minutes or something like that. Maybe sooner than that. And so they plan on doing all these tests at the same time, get as much in there as possible.
Very, very interesting. All right, Scott, as always, we all appreciate you for coming on and bringing us up to date. And unless something crazy breaks in the next few days, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And to all of you out there, it's been, and next week, Scott's going to bring a joke. And
yeah. I'll try to get it. Didn't have time to write one today, but we'll see what we can come up with next week.
Yeah, and then we have another real comedian, Brian White. He's actually done stand up.
He is. There was that big thread, and that Cern, and I think John Twigg they were just like writing some of the corniest bot jokes. And then I saw that Brian liked one of them, and I'm like, oh no, Brian's in the room. Watch out now. Now the really corny jokes are going to come. But he didn't. Hey, surprisingly, he didn't jump in with any that I'm aware of. So you'll have to ask him when he comes on. Says, okay, you got a couple of bot jokes, because it's all the rage now.
In every business, you want to have a unique selling proposition. So for the channel, I've tried to make it unique in some ways, like really zeroing in on finance and the economy and whatnot. But maybe the unique selling proposition would be great comedy. Maybe
great bot jokes. Yeah. Well, if you're going to do that, having Brian, Cern, and me on probably won't do it.
We'll have.
So I think Brian is like one of the funniest guys I know. There's no doubt about it.
All right, Scott. Again, thank you, and to all of you out there, it's been great joking around with you today.